Hello, I'm Edward Tarte, once a Catholic priest for 5 years in the 1960s, now an atheist, which simply means I find no credible evidence for the existence of any God. I had forgotten that I have a few pictures from my seminary days and from my first days as a priest. Here is a picture of my seminary class taken in the late 1950s. I, a college graduate with a degree in math, was age 23 or 24. Most of my classmates had entered the seminary right out of high school and were age 20 or 21. Can you spot me? Here I am, first person on the second row. To supplement this picture, please watch my videos about the seminary's grip on us if you haven't already. For 6 to 8 school years, we were in a very closed, restricted environment. It was all male. We lacked the opportunities to develop and mature emotionally, socially, sexually, through interaction with females. Any of us who wanted to keep up with what was happening in the outside world had to work at it. There was one small radio in the recreation room and a small TV that we could watch 1 or 2 hours a week. There were no newspapers. There was one copy of the weekly news magazine U.S. News and World Report in the tiny seminary library. We were taught that by nature we were filthy, despicable sinners, and we were commanded to rise above that filthy condition by simultaneously loving and fearing the Catholic Christian God, who, if we did not conform, would ultimately set us on fire and keep us on fire forever. Yet in some ways this closed society was for that era normal. For example, every day at specific times and places, the air was filled by cigarette smoke. I did not smoke, but I unavoidably inhaled much second-hand smoke. But back to the photograph. Within a year or 2 or 3 of this picture, Tony Barranco left the seminary, so did Ray Guidry, so did David Schubert. Felix Scardino became a priest, but after a few priestly years he left the priesthood and became a very successful professional counselor, husband, and father. Gary Fawcett, the most devout and prayerful of us, left the priesthood after 3 or 4 priestly years and became a successful businessman, husband, and father. Both Felix and I maintain email contact. Gary now refers to the seminary as an institution of misinformation. Joe Fertitta left the priesthood and became a furniture salesman. Cecil Latif was one of the seminary organists, and he helped me learn to play the organ. He left the priesthood and became a piano teacher. A.J. Plasala had a beautiful baritone singing voice. He left the priesthood and became a husband and father. I have contacted him by email, but he has not responded. Dan Cawthon left the priesthood. Ray Bresna, perhaps the class clown, has died. Joe Culver remained a priest to the end of his life. He died a few years ago. Pat Doherty has also died. Jack Dinkins is now a pastor at a church about 30 miles from where I live. I have contacted him, but he has not responded. Here's another picture. This was taken about 6 years after the previous one. This is a picture about probably my first 5 seconds as a priest. It was taken in May 1963. The bishop has just conferred upon me, you can see his hat here, The bishop has just conferred upon me the sacrament of holy orders. He has laid his hands firmly on my head. By Catholic teaching, that gave me the power, the magical power, of changing bread and wine into the real body and blood of Jesus, as well as the magical power to obtain God's forgiveness of people's sins through the sacrament of confession. My parents, non-believers, were in the congregation. This was in year 7 of their 12 years of grief and anguish, during which they never stopped loving me. A week or so after that, I celebrated my first solemn Mass at the church near the home of my parents, where I lived when I was a teenager. Here I am. This is the church's pastor. This, the church's assistant pastor. This was a special celebratory Mass with the church choir singing. Here I am near the end of Mass, giving out Holy Communion to members of the congregation. Of the hundreds of people there, almost all of us firmly believed that the little round wafers were the real body of Jesus. I say almost all of us. My parents were there. They understood that there was no basis for our belief, that the little round wafers were undoubtedly nothing more or less than what they appeared to be, small, round, hardened wafers of bread. A year or two later, the bishop assigned me to be an assistant pastor at a large church in a wealthy area of Houston, Texas. After about 2 years there, I started doing some reading, listening, and discussing, by which I began to free myself from the church's grip of delusion, falsehood, and superstition. It was a gradual process. 5 years after I became a priest, I broke free from the grift, left the priesthood and the Catholic Church, and became a math teacher. This marked the end of my parents' 12 years of grief and anguish. I have already told you that several of my classmates also left the priesthood. Others remained priests for the rest of their lives. I have said elsewhere, and I will say it here, that I am deeply ashamed of those years. Some of you have told me that I should not consider them wasted because, you say, those years have helped me to be stronger now as an atheist. To those of you who have encouraged me, I thank you sincerely. And to all of you, thank you for watching this video.